Hi, I'm Vivek Madala.
And I'm David Poe.
And we recorded the new theme song for the Scooby-Doo and Guess Who series.
And you're listening to a podcast named Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Hey gang, and welcome to another episode of a podcast named Scooby-Doo, the show that attempts to unravel 50 years of mysteries, meddling kids, and masked villains. My name is Mike Josick, and I'll be your guide through all things ghostly and groovy as I investigate every angle of every mystery and beyond. So grab yourself some Scooby snacks, fire up the mystery machine, and let's start the show.
So, let me get this straight. You're four kooky teenagers and a talking dog that solve mysteries.
Exactly.
And you drive around in a colorful van actively searching for these mysteries?
You know it, Mr. Freeman.
And sometimes the mysteries just find us.
But you came here today hoping the ghost of Jean LeBeau would attack you?
Yes.
Sadly.
Fascinating.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the podcast. This is show number 47 in my continuing series of conversations with folks who have all worked in some capacity on the IP franchise that is Scooby-Doo. Now, if you caught the title of the episode on the way in, you're already aware that my guest today is none other than producer and showrunner Chris Bailey, who has had a long and an illustrious career in animation and visual effects and video games. And we do talk about all of that, but the main reason that he's on the show is to chat about working on the latest iteration of Scooby-Doo on television, Scooby-Doo and Guess Who. Now, I'm pleased as punch to have Chris on the show for a couple of reasons. One, his aforementioned illustrious career. There's a lot to talk about. Wanted to touch on some of that and just sort of get some of the background on some of the things that Chris has accomplished over the course of his time in the industry, but also because Scooby-Doo and Guess Who hasn't really gotten a lot of coverage in the media. I did talk to Vivek Madala and David Poe a year ago about creating the theme song for Scooby-Doo and Guess Who, but I haven't really talked to anybody from the show since, and looking around online, there really isn't a lot of people, a lot of interviews, a lot of articles, a lot of anything. The show has kind of just gone under the radar. There's been, a little bit of fan chatter on social media, but other than that, nothing really substantial. So super happy to have, the guy at the top come in and chat about this show and give us some behind the scenes stuff, talking about the guest stars, talking about coming up with the idea, the decision to riff on the old new Scooby-Doo movies, and also drop a little chatter about work that Chris has coming up, including the feature film Paws of Fury, which is coming out from Paramount Pictures this month. Now, I should also mention another sort of reason that I'm kind of happy that I had Chris come on the show is that it times out super nice because the complete second season for Scooby-Doo and Guess Who was also just released in the US on June 28th. The Canadian release is actually held off till December 6th. So Canadians won't be seeing that on their store shelves or available through Amazon or other online retailers until then. And though I don't know this for certain, I'm pretty sure that probably has to do with broadcast rights. There's probably some Canadian television networks. Whoever's showing Scooby-Doo and Guess Who in Canada, most likely Teletoon, maybe YTV. They probably have some rights tied up. The home video release would cut into their broadcasting schedule, and they might also be targeting December. It's a good Christmas, gift buying time. So just that's likely why we have to wait for it in Canada. Warner Brothers was kind enough to send me a copy of the DVDs, which I have been going through and enjoying. Gonna do a review of it, most likely closer to the Canadian release, but I did want to just give a shout out that it is out there for American listeners. And, if you haven't picked it up yet, listen to my chat with Chris and then go get yourself a copy. And if you have gotten yourself a copy, hopefully you've been checking out the episodes and have them in your mind for when you're listening to my conversation with Chris. And maybe some of the stuff he's talking about will ring some bells and have some callbacks for you. And I should mention, just on a technical level, the interview was done in 2 sittings. It was done on the same day, but there were some commitments that Chris had. So we had to shut down kind of the first section and then start up again later. And when we started up again, his granddaughter was over and napping, so he was talking quieter. I think there were also some technical issues with his microphone and speaker situation. So the audio quality does change somewhat, and I tried to do some amplifying and some cleaning up. I got it the best I could. If you notice any difference, that's what it is. If you don't notice any difference, try and forget you heard this. With that, I will let you get to listening to that conversation. I'll see you after the chat for a few closing comments, and I hope you enjoy our conversation, and I will see you all on the other side. For the last 30 plus years, my guest has enjoyed a long and varied career in animation. He's worked in traditional 2D television and film, as well as on CGI features. He's also contributed to big budget tentpole films as a visual effects supervisor, as well as producing animation for video games, music videos, and theme park rides. I think you'd be hard pressed to look at his long list of credits and not be able to find at least one project he's worked on that isn't likely a personal favorite of yours. Maybe it's The Little Mermaid or the Kim Possible series for Disney feature and television animation, respectively. Or maybe it's films like X2, X-Men United, or the live action Garfield films for Fox. Or just possibly it's the one project that has actually given us the reason for sitting down and chatting today, the last small screen iteration of everyone's favorite mystery solving gang, Scooby-Doo and Guess Who, which, by the way, has just released its 2nd season on home video. So if you haven't grabbed yours yet, be sure to pop out and remedy that situation post haste. I would like you all to join me in welcoming to the podcast animator, director, and producer Chris Bailey. It's great to have you on the show, Chris. How are things with you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Mike.
I've actually been wanting to talk to you for about a year now. I talked to Vivek Madala and David Poe, who did the theme music.
Okay.
And
that's right. I remember Vivek, emailing me.
Yeah, and I wanted to get you on the show, and then stuff happened in pandemic, and it just kind of like sat by the wayside. And I figured with the DVDs coming out, it's a great time to have you on and have that synergy, for lack of a better word. But,
yeah, it's probably better now since now 2nd season's out, but that kind of smooths over me feeling like an afterthought.
And it's also, I mean, realistically, it's been some time since you've sort of been in contact with this. Like the DVD's coming out, but the show's been over for a bit, and production's probably been over for even longer. So
I think probably about a year and a half, maybe over a year, certainly.
I'm kind of curious. I talked about your many varied credits, and my guess is you're probably just following the work, but to look at something like, Dragon's Lair ending up on something like Oliver and Company or Little Mermaid, to Kim Possible, to Scooby-Doo, to doing visual effects stuff for, big movies like X-Men. What is that trajectory? Like what is the logical connection between those things that took you through those points?
Well, I think you hit on it. It was following the work. When I got into animation in the 80s, which is so long ago, animation wasn't like it is today. The visual effects weren't like it is today. There weren't a lot of jobs. Disney made, kind of a so-so movie every 4 years, and somebody else would always make an animated movie somewhere or for TV. But there wasn't a lot of things going on, and TV for series was pretty much a wasteland. It was just all, I mean, I know this stuff has fans, so forgive me, but, Care Bears stuff, I grew up on the superhero cartoons, when they actually beat each other up and put the bad guys in jail. And then when they became the Super Friends. And I know people love Super Friends, but, just pointing out to the bad guys that, gosh, they were maybe just went down the wrong path. And they go, gosh, wish you would have told me sooner. I didn't mean to be a bad guy. All that stuff felt kind of wimpy and soft to me.
Hey, even the people who worked on Super Friends were frustrated that they couldn't have people punching each other.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, So I grew up in comic books and that superhero action animation, and I loved old Warner Brothers. But I wanted to do comic books, but there were no colleges at the time to go learn to do comic books. And I wasn't a fine artist, so going to a fine art school didn't make sense. But then I read about CalArts with their animation program. I said, I like cartoons, and I don't know if they don't make any of the cartoons I like anymore, but whatever I learned there will just make me a better comic book artist. I don't know, maybe I can do storyboards, or maybe I can do whatever. It was very much like out there in the horizon somewhere, there is a job that I will be able to do drawings for.
Were there many or any comic book people that came out of CalArts?
There's people that have done comics, but no real comic book people. It was an animation program, clearly.
Yeah.
It was a Disney animation program, but a lot of people loved comics. So a few people that had the opportunity to do a comic book here or a cover there, or they've managed to do that. Because there is a fair amount, not whole, I don't know, what's fair? I guess that's a relative term. There are a lot of people that work in comics and work in animation, mostly in background painting and storyboards and art directing, that kind of things, not so much in animation. But anyway, so I went there, and I just happened to kind of ride that wave of Dragon's Lair. Kind of was a shot in the arm to pop culture and animation in the early 80s. Shortly after leaving CalArts, I was hired at Disney, and I worked in Oliver and Company and Little Mermaid and Great Mouse Detective. And somewhere in between there, I had the opportunity from my good friend Bill Croyer, who I didn't know at the time, but I must have met somewhere, to learn to do CGI for movies and TV. I think the first movie he hired me on was called Star Chaser: The Legend of Orin. Right. And it was it was like one of those goofy, realistic comic book things that got made. And, it's what it is. And it has fans, and which is kind of cool. But that's where I learned to take an object and spin it around in X, Y, and Z and roll, pitch, and yaw. And believe it or not, at that time, we didn't even have spline programs, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with. But in CGI, you pose the keys, like in traditional animation, and then the computer will spline those keys. Okay. To give you the smooth action, the slow ins, the slow outs, and you can manipulate those things. The splines are your assistant, essentially, the assistant animator to traditional animation. So we had to draw all these out by hand on graph paper. So you draw the 60-degree field of view, or whatever your focal length was. You draw a path of action. Then you literally have to go, okay, frame one is 29.5, an X. And so a lot of the early spaceships in the movie, they kind of do this. They jitter a little bit as they move across the screen. Then, because of Bill Croyer's contacts, he got us a spline program that was used in Buckaroo Banzai. And all of a sudden, our animation got 100 times better. It was like Star Wars-y stuff.
Huge Banzai fan here. So that was a nice.
Oh yeah, me too.
That was a nice drop.
Modern day Renaissance man in a sci-fi movie. It's fantastic. So here I was, an embryonic animator. I had a little bit of Disney experience, Disney feature experience on Great Mouse Detective. Now I had some CG experience. So I was like one of the few character animators in Hollywood that had that CGI experience. And then I got a call from Bill again. He was at Digital Productions, and we were working on a Mick Jagger video, Hard Woman. And that was a pretty big project. And so I actually left Disney feature after a year. And I know it's kind of stupid. It's like, yes, I was 22 years old, and I've had enough of Disney feature. It happened to be, I don't know what it was. It just felt like the right thing to do at the time. And that's where I worked on the Mick Jagger video. I actually animated the very first CG Spider-Man logo for Marvel Productions. It was Spider-Man doing a flip in the air, landing on the MP.
I remember that, yeah.
And a Golden Grams commercial and all kinds of crazy stuff. But ultimately, that studio went out of business. But I was talking to Disney again about something, I can't remember. But they said, look, would you like to come back and do traditional animation for us on Oliver and Company? I was like, yeah, sure, great. So I got to know all those people, and I was part of meetings where we'd talk about CGI because of my experience. but I was strictly a 2D animator. Even though I left CGI after a couple of years at Digital Productions and went back to Disney Feature, that experience led to me becoming the animation supervisor on the live action movie Hocus Pocus, which led to, when I left Disney Feature, becoming a CGI animation director for a bunch of live action films.
I've heard other animators, people who've been in the business for a really long time, they'll say, don't turn down jobs. Like whatever the job is, whether you've done it or never done it, whether it's above you or beneath you, like if it's going to offer you a new skill or a new experience or a new contact, an opportunity to network, like to take that. Just kind of from what you're saying and kind of looking at your career and, talking about following the job like that, you seem like kind of the poster boy for just that thing.
Yeah, I think so. Well, because
when you get one job doing one thing, like you get your first visual effects job and then that leads to another visual effects job, and then you're spending some time in visual effects until you choose to move to something else, whether it's forwards or backwards or laterally or whatever.
And I think I wasn't even thinking so much about the career ladder so much as just being able to stay employed.
Yeah,
there just weren't that many jobs back then, and I'm like, oh my god, I went to school with all these like people who are so much more talented than I am and so much more ability. I got to know something they don't. Otherwise, I'm just going to die. Because contrary to the old adage, you can starve.
Yeah. And that's the main argument to doing it, to having a diverse kind of skill set, where if this particular thing that you do, if there's no work, you've got this other thing that you can do, and you can just kind of go down whatever different stream.
Well, that's right. And because I'm not a particular, I just like to work on things that are interesting to me. And for the most part, I can become interested in most about anything. I mean, some things clearly have not connected with me, and I've taken my name out of the hat or said, I think it's a pass. But I like TV. I like expensive visual effects. I like feature animation. I like video games and theme parks. And so if I get an offer to do one of those things and it's something I think I can contribute to, it's like, yeah, why not? I like all that stuff.
So the attraction to animation, I mean, you mentioned being interested in comic books kind of initially and going through CalArts and ending up doing animation. Is it you're mostly drawn to just visual storytelling? You really like the art of?
Yeah, I think so. I was always attracted to drawings, and I like humor. I love Warner Brothers cartoons, especially Chuck Jones cartoons. And they were so well drawn too. But then even in comic books, there were two things that I was attracted to, despite like the obvious adventure about people just beating the stuffing out of each other. And there was some kind of cathartic thing in that. But I was drawn to panels where sometimes the artist would animate the character ghosted, like throughout the frame in like three or four panels. And I remember even at a young age, I go, that works. This one doesn't work. Why doesn't that one work? And because there was something wrong about the squash and stretch or the physics or the bounce wasn't there. And so that's kind of interesting to look back on, that I was even sort of aware of the movement at that time within comics before I was even thinking animation. And then there was a woman at Marvel Comics named Marie Severin.
Yes.
And she was a wonderful comic artist. She like drew Hulk, and she drew everything actually, and was like cover artist for years. But she was always drawn to humor. So when I became a member of FOOM, Friends of Old Marvel.
No way.
Fan club. And Marie would do these funny caricatures of the artists, and she drew in the several of my favorite issues of this comic called Not Brand Ec, which was sort of Marvel's humor magazine, and she would do funny superheroes. And I was just drawn to that kind of thing. So I was always kind of drawn to caricature and humor as much as I was drawn to adventure. So I guess I've always kind of had one foot in both of those pools. And in animation, while I love animation, frankly, it was a little frustrating working at Disney Feature because they're so passive. Nobody picks up a rock and throws it at anybody. With the exception of The Incredibles, it's all people going through sort of emotional problems. And I'm like, where's the big physical problem that can be fixed by hitting somebody in the face, or something like that. But anyway, I guess I'm digressing a little bit.
You were craving a little more action and adventure.
Yeah. And so I grabbed my friends at Disney Feature. They were the ones that felt similarly. that we just wanted to see a little more action.
It's funny because I've never met anybody who is actually a member of Friends of Old Marvel, so it's kind of fascinating to me that was. I always saw it in the comic books, but nobody ever knew anybody who was like an actual member.
If in the other room I have a flat file, and I have so many things I've lost over the years, but so many interesting things I still have for some reason. I actually have a Jim Steranko signed cover for Foom with his Incredible Hulk on it.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, holy cats, I think I got that signed when I was 14.
I'm curious, you've got a story credit on Oliver and Company, and I was wondering what that encompassed.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's right. Well, what happened? Let's see. So the way that these movies are made is that, you have the script oftentimes. Sometimes they're developed visually, which is kind of a classic Disney way. We had a script, and you board it, you put it up on reels, and you look at it. And some stuff is working and some stuff isn't. And if you were to think of storyboards like dailies, great, let's shoot it. Let's throw it up there. And it's like, we don't need that scene, do we? Instead of putting a piece of film on the cutting room floor, it's a bunch of drawings. And something wasn't working about the ending. And I remember we had like a little story meeting. I pitched an idea for how the bad guys or our good guys would get inside the warehouse for the climax. And we ended up doing that. And then I think somebody pitched something else for the possible change in the ending. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but Kirk-wise, Kevin Lima and I ended up with the assignment of reboarding the ending chase of the movie. It was funny because I was an animator. I think we were all in animation at the time, and we've all gone off and supervised projects, directed projects since then. But however it happened, I wish I could remember the exact details. We just found ourselves in a room, and we boarded the entire ending on little Post-it notes. And that's how we pitched them to Peter Schneider and Jeffrey Katzenberg. And because the deadline of the movie was coming up, there was no time to draw them up big on nice storyboard panels. So they actually sent them over to WDI and had our little postage size thumbnails blown up to storyboard size. Then they were shot on film and cut into the reel, because that's what you did back in the 80s. So these shitty little Post-it note sketches were the storyboard template for the ending of the film.
Nice.
But that's it. And usually those things, many times when we'd have these story meetings on those films where it's about, gosh, can we come out of this movie with 10 more gags, or this sequence is lagging a little bit, what can we do? Many times the person who makes the suggestion gets the opportunity to animate that or to storyboard that. So my guess is Kevin and Kirk and I probably contributed a few ideas in that story meeting to the ending. And they said, great, you guys want to board it? And we probably went, sure, again, following the work.
Right. So you're working on all the stuff that we've talked about. And how do you find yourself at Warner Brothers a few years ago with potentially working on Scooby-Doo?
Well, it's funny because I've worked kind of all around Disney, short stint at DreamWorks, various smaller studios you wouldn't know, but I'd never worked at Warner Brothers. The only TV I'd done was for Disney TV on Kim Possible and Clerks. But I've talked to them over the years a lot because I like superheroes, love to animate a superhero thing. And I've talked to them over the years and pitched projects about different cartoony superhero things. And some things went further than others. Some things were dead in the water. But in the interim, I went off and I was directing a movie called Blazing Samurai, which is coming out soon under the title Paws of Fury.
Right.
And there was a hiccup in the middle of production where we went on hiatus. And I called, an executive, Sam Register, or didn't call him, I emailed him. And I said, hey, my movie just hit a speed bump and I'm available. And I know we always talked about doing a cartoony superhero thing. And I don't know if you have anything going on, but I'm available. Could be for a week, could be forever. I just wanted you to know. And then he sent me to Jay Bastian, who's head of production. And Jay had me come in and he had an idea that actually fit that bill. And it was like, oh my God, this is a perfect project. I can't really talk about it, unfortunately, but there was like 2 or 3 paragraphs on it, and there was some interest in developing this movie for home video. Brought a writer in, I did a bunch of artwork for it, and then it died before we even delivered the script. I think it was about the time AT&T bought Warner Brothers, and then home video, somebody shuffled the deck, and it went from like, where's the script to, yeah, we're not doing that. And it was, obviously I was pretty devastated because I thought it was like right up my alley. And then Jay said, well, how do you feel about Scooby? And I said, you mean a series? And he said, yeah. I said, I don't know. I said, I watched Scooby when I was a little boy, for the first few years. But, once I kind of became comic book guy, animator guy, Chris Bailey, I never really thought about it because I moved on to more, adult science fiction and horror. And I said, well, I'm not saying no, though. Just let me think about it. And he said, okay. But the only limitation I want to give you is original costumes. Just, we want to go, we don't want a new look. We want to go original. Well, all right. So I came back with a couple ideas. One was the Scooby-Doo gang on summer vacation, taking a trip down Route 66. Because I thought what's cool about a family vacation is that everybody gets a day for their thing, and everybody else in the family kind of has to sort of indulge that person, whether they're interested or not. So we figured Mike Ryan was my story editor on that, or he came in later actually. But I was thinking how great it would be that, Scooby and Shaggy would want to find all the greatest, diners and dives along the way. And Velma would probably want to hunt out old thrift shops and things. And all those things would just lend themselves to a Scooby adventure. And it was like, yeah, maybe that's pretty good. And we went about it for a while. And then you always have a backup idea, right? And so the other idea was to renovate the old Scooby-Doo movies, but do it with contemporary guest stars. And that's the one that we decided to go with. Originally, the concept was to do half cartoon guest stars and then half celebrity guest stars. And then as the show developed, it became fewer and fewer cartoon guest stars and more celebrity guest stars, as you can imagine. And I have no idea why, except for maybe it's more fun to take a human celebrity to lunch than a cartoon guest star for the executives. I don't know. But
I wonder, because DC is a part of that whole Warner Brothers umbrella.
Sure.
But having like a Batman character showing up in a Scooby-Doo show, they're still technically owned by different entities.
But Batman's been on Scooby like back when I was a kid. So, so that there's actually precedent for that.
There is. But I just wonder, because there was a movie that came out, Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo, not that long ago. This was like 2020 or 2021, where the Scarecrow featured in the film as one of the bad guys. And I remember talking to, I believe it was Max Adams, who was putting that together. And it wasn't just a matter of like, it's a character in the stable of DC Warner Brothers characters, and you just use them at will. You actually have to get permission to do it. And
and they got to prove how it's being used, and all that.
It's like licensing. It's licensing ultimately.
Yeah. I ran into that even at Disney Feature when I was doing a project for WDI, Walt Disney Imagineering, and I wanted to use a clip of Zorro, like as a live action clip in this animated thing I was doing, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and they had to buy it from the other division. And then there was talk, it's going to cost this much money. I'm like, well, you're taking money out of your left pocket and putting it in your right. What? But, I didn't quite understand that the way these giant companies are run is all these divisions are their own company with their own bottom line, and that they're accountable to the executives. But on the face of it, it seems pretty silly. But yeah, for Flash, and we had Flash and Wonder Woman and Batman, of course. And yeah, we did have to get, permission for them to be used.
That was just my assumption when I noticed, because I thought there was going to be a lot more Hanna-Barbera, DC kind of characters.
That was the original goal, for sure.
And
no, we had a Flintstones idea.
Nope.
And then I was like, I'll make it work. I guarantee. And I have some artwork somewhere where I wanted to do Frankenstein Jr. You know,
nice.
I thought that would be pretty cool because it's kind of sci-fi and bring some horror into that. But yeah, we did the Funky Phantom, which I thought was fun, and we did Magilla Gorilla, which was fun. You know, I loved that as a little kid, so it was kind of fun to revisit that stuff. But yeah, we moved away from that. I guess, you know, with Wanda Sykes and Magilla Gorilla, we did both. We had the celebrity come in, and we had the cartoon guest star.
Yeah, I just figured it was probably easier talking to people's agents and just making a deal like that than having to
You'd
navigate.
think it would be, but no, it's tough because you get people and you go out to them and sometimes you don't hear back, but sometimes you get interest, but it's not a definitive yes. And you're like, we have to write a script. So like Mike Ryan, who I just can't like praise enough, he would write sort of premises that were a little bit broad that if we couldn't get somebody like Terry Bradshaw, who we did get, and he was like just a wonderful tour de force to work with and a great personality and great in the show. But it's like, oh, well, maybe this could be a sports show. The premise would work if we had a tennis player, you know, or so he would kind of keep the story a little bit on the broad side. And then when we actually got the celebrity to say yes, he would sort of plug in the specifics and nudge the story in that direction.
That opens the door to a lot of questions that I have about the celebrity guests. I guess let's start with, was there like a list that you guys worked from?
Sure. We'd meet every week and we talk about who else could we get? Who else would be fun? And the number one thing
that was generated by you, that wasn't given to you by the studio.
No, it was brought me and Mike and Jay, our executive. We would talk about it like every week.
Okay.
Like, who should we go out with? Well, what's good? And what's the number one thing wasn't that we get someone that was popular or that who kids knew. It was really the number one, would they be sort of a fun character in the Scooby-Doo universe? Because as a kid, when you watch Scooby-Doo movies, I didn't know who half those people were.
Yeah.
But, you know, they probably had TV shows on NBC or whoever owned Scooby at the time, which is probably why Sonny and Cher were on it, right? It was like, hey, let's get the kids interested in who that Sonny and Cher was.
Well, that original Scooby-Doo movies, everyone who appeared on that show had a contract with CBS. And that was basically, they were mandated. It's like, you're appearing on the show.
Yeah, but you know, they, I don't know, but say mandated, it's like they were forced at the end of a spear, you know, or a sword to walk the plank. But when, you know, because we had Sandy Duncan in our show, and again, we had Cher who did the original show. They loved it. They were really happy to do it, and they were just delightful to work with. And, you know, being remembering when I was a fan, kid watching them, and, you know, being a fan as I grew up, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like reading Scooby-Doo with Cher in the recording booth. How surreal is that? And talking to Sandy Duncan, and I watched her my whole life on TV. So
what would you say is the percentage of people you wanted that you got to people that you wanted that you didn't get?
You know, gosh, it's hard. I mean, our list was huge for sure, but it's really, I don't really think of it in those terms. There was nobody, because I'm trying to think, was there anybody on the list that I was like, but I don't think so. I think it was more a matter of the schedule was kind of driving. So we'd go out to a lot of people, and we were enthusiastic about all of them. And it would depend on who, in the order that people responded to us, we were writing scripts for them. So it just felt like this crazy game of catch up all the time where we were just, you know, sprinting. So I don't quite, I'm trying to think if there was a disappointment of someone we didn't get. I don't think so. Because you know what, I mean, look, if Morgan Freeman agreed to do our show, and Malcolm McDowell and Jason Sudeikis and Cher and Terry Bradshaw, what a broad group of people. I don't, Weird Al, and it's kind of hard to, Whoopi Goldberg, it's kind of hard to say, oh yeah, it's a shame we had to have them on the show. Yeah, they were our second pick. It wasn't like that at all.
It never even occurred to me. I mean, usually when you're talking about getting actors for any project, you're working around their schedules. Throwing that into the mix of having to write for animation and plan this stuff, did you have like the sequence of episodes? Were you kind of forced into, well, I guess the next one is going to feature this person because this is the person that's available?
Sure.
Or were you planning, let's have it roll out this way?
I would say most of them unfolded. We would get a yes or no on somebody in time to just go forward smoothly. But I remember the second season at the end, the show numbers are all kind of out of whack because I think we really wanted, for obvious reasons, we really wanted Cher to be on the show and work with her, and she was interested. But she's very busy, and it was hard to get an answer back in a timely manner. And I thought at one point it wasn't going to happen, just for those logistical reasons that I'm not really involved with. I just knew we weren't getting an answer, but there was still a lot of interest. So I think her show got moved back a little bit, and we pushed another one forward. So yeah, it was a little bit of that, definitely. And then a little bit of scrambling at the last minute with, where it's like, all right, great, write it. Mike would go home and like write the script overnight practically.
And what does that do to the production pipeline?
Well, it kind of, I think for like character designs and set designs and all that, you can definitely hear the bolts straining on the submarine, So yeah, that's a little difficult, but I don't know. It's a trade-off. Everything's a trade-off.
Did you know that you were going to get 2 seasons? I know, like, traditionally for the last couple of iterations of the show, they would do, 52 episodes and 2 seasons, and that was it. And then they would end it and move on to something else. So,
well, you never know. But so they say, it was 1 season. And then there's other people that said, we're doing 2. And, but it's, you don't know until you get into it.
But you're kind of going into it thinking of it as...
I was hoping to do 2 seasons for sure.
And also like thinking of it as a limited commitment where it's like, I'm going to come in and do my Scooby-Doo and then move on to the next thing.
I don't know. I don't know if I think of it. It's funny because you look back and obviously movies and TV series, they all have a, limited lifespan or of a season or, for a film, it's a one-off. But I never really quite think of it like that. I guess I have been a hired gun before, but I don't quite feel it that way. Because even, there was a quote I heard from James Cameron where he's just said, every time he makes a movie, he's going to the Super Bowl and he's, puts his pedal to the metal. And I feel the same way. It's like, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I don't, I never phone it in. It's like, if I'm going to work doing Scooby-Doo, we're going to do the best damn Scooby-Doo we can possibly make. And it was really fun to kind of revisit the characters from my childhood and go, oh yeah, I know these guys, which was my reaction after watching a bunch of the old shows when I came back to Jay with The Premises, and getting to know the actors and everything has just been wonderful.
So if Warner's wanted a 3rd season, you would have been gung-ho all in?
Oh yeah, I was asked at one point, when it was actually after the Cher recording, if I'd be interested, because there was some talk, by one of the executives approached me and said, would I be in? And I'm like, sure, why not? Having a ball. I mean, I just got done reading Scooby-Doo with Cher, and I'm like, this is crazy. This is like one of those once in a lifetime experiences.
I kind of felt I was kind of crushing some episodes in preparation for talking to you. And in some ways, I kind of felt like it might be easy to write for, but then it also seems extremely complicated to write for. Easy in kind of the sense that it was hearkening back to sort of a previous iteration. So you were going for a very sort of classic feel and tone. So you weren't trying to like necessarily push the show into an area that it's not accustomed to being in. There's always the challenge of kind of having like a mystery for every episode or whatever. But then the more I watched and you see like the different personalities and just the insane variation in where these people are coming from fashion, coming from sports, coming from food, or they're animated characters or whatever. And just thinking about having to like wrap my head around that on a animation timeline to get that done. I'm not sure if I'm articulating this the way I want to, but
well, there's a lot of pieces, and in many ways, yeah, it's familiar. So you're like, sure, you get the Shaggy and Scooby go off and try to find the kitchen, and they open the door and there's a ghost there. Or there's things that you can just sort of pull on.
And you have the things like the Velma always, Scooby saying, "I'm confused," and then Velma says, "It's really not that hard." And
yeah, right.
Like there's those echoes, those rhyming bits, right, that are in like every episode, and kind of when they're gonna hit. But then
we wanted to be a little like, because we were doing a clear callback to an earlier show, and a lot of parents watch the show with kids. We wanted there to be a little bit of a self-aware feeling to the show, but we didn't want to mock the classic, gags or situations. I think the tough part came in with really, well, for Mike, it was really about sort of fleshing out all these locations and doing his research so that there was something unique about the guest star that pertained to the episode. But it was really sort of the puzzle of making it all fit together with the guest star. And how do we come up with a different romp, the French farce door thing, which people come to expect. And, you don't want to repeat yourself, but there's a certain formula to it. And then also there's a struggle that when you have guest stars and you have a gang of 5 characters, ideally you want to write it like a Justice League episode where after they meet the villain, Wonder Woman and Batman go off on their own, and Flash and Green Lantern. And so you're not writing 7 characters in every shot. So that's actually harder than you think to do, especially when, you've got all your characters are trapped in one location. It's like, all right, how do we separate them so we can actually draw the thing in time? Just physically drawing that many characters is a difficult thing to do.
Each celebrity, for the most part, kind of has a hobby or an eccentricity that you kind of lean into with the show. And I wondered if that was something that was generated primarily from like on the writing side, or if that was something that was done in concert with a celebrity where you're like, hey, what kind of stuff are you into? Like, is Jason Sudeikis actually a sneakerhead?
Yeah, this is all Michael. Michael, he's the one that, like, once we get a general premise bought off on by the studio and we get our celebrities, then he just does like a deep dive into who they are, and it could be something that everybody knows, like oh gosh, I'm trying to think of one of our celebrities. I'm like, I'm coming up as a blank. Like Lucy Liu's an artist, outside of being an actress. So that was a pretty easy thing to work in. But I don't know if people know that about Jason Sudeikis, or he was the one like with Terry Bradshaw. It's like, oh well, he's got this ranch in this part of the country. Let's do something with with that. He'll just find some little nugget. Sometimes it's a bigger nugget and sometimes small, but it's all him.
And I think we've also touched on this a little bit prior as well, but the process for actually acquiring one of these like celebrities, is there like a department that you guys have that handles that, or is that you like getting on the phone and calling an agent or Michael? Or
no, it's very official through the studio, like that Jay and our exec and Michael and I will have this list, and Sam Register, he weighs in on it. And like he was the one that really wanted us to do an Urkel show. And I was like, kind of like, Urkel? Really? I'm aware of Urkel, but I never, like watched the show or anything. But he was right. It turned out to be a really good show. So the ideas come about like internally like that. But once we kind of agree on a list of a few people to go out to, the studio just does that. They reach out to agents and ask if they'd be interested. And we try to make it really, well, this is Jay, the royal we, make it very easy that they're never asked to come back and do pickups or do any marketing. They can literally just come in and do it. And then when they walk out of the studio, know that they're done. So I think that's, one reason we're able to get so many really great and busy people in Hollywood.
I'm kind of curious with the actual recording process, I guess a 2-part question. First part being, how many people actually like came into the studio to record and how many sort of did it remotely? And also when it comes to recording people who aren't generally voice artists, how difficult was it to kind of coach or just kind of work with the celebrities? You can kind of tell watching the episodes, some of them take to it a little bit better than some others do.
Sure.
Just curious about kind of who came in and who didn't, and then the process of working with them as
I gotcha.
in the booth.
Yeah, I think, before I get into that, there was probably one of my best experiences that actually sort of changed how I worked with people after that was working with Whoopi Goldberg. Because not only she was ridiculously like kind and funny. And, she was back east because she does The View. And so we had her on the phone, but you could tell that she's one of those people that is just actually interested in who's on the other side of the telephone line. I told her that we'd actually already worked together, but she didn't know it. And she was intrigued. And it's because, I animated a couple shots on The Lion King of her character. So that got us into a conversation about animation and Star Trek and all that. But the way I asked her how she wanted to work, and most people say, oh, I'll work any way you want. And they're super gracious. But she said, what I like to do is let's just read through it a couple of times. And then if there's anything that, you haven't, that you want, we can go back and do that. And she said, that's how she rolls. So I went, all right, sounds great. And I love that. So with just the briefest of, I guess, orientation of the material, or this is where we are, this is how loud it's going to be, this is how big the room is. We just did it kind of cold, and running through it twice just sort of allowed her to kind of find it. And then I'd say, here, let's do one where you're running double time, or let's do one where, we'll just maybe some coverage of yell over a large distance. Now give me one intimate just in case I decide to change the staging. But after that, if the talent was open to it, which most were, I'd say I'd do the same thing. I'd give them just a brief little, recap of the material and say, let's just run through it a couple of times. And I just found that I got something really sort of normal and comfortable for them. And I think more importantly, it was their interpretation of the material. And say, you got to run like scared here. You think you're going to die. I mean, that's a common thing I might say. But instead of leading with that, I would just see if they, how they got there on their own first.
And how long would a session generally take, like to go through?
Some of the scripts are longer than others. It could be maybe 1 to 3 hours. But I think we always tried to book 2 hours, I think, to be comfortable. A couple of the longer ones where the star was in every shot, I think sometimes we went a little long. But let's see. So I think all the actors, of course, were great. The ones that see on TV in the movies. Some, like Jason Sudeikis, was wonderful because he would do it, and it was like because for his improv background, every version was like a different version of great. And sometimes I'd say, great, let's move on. He'd go, hey, and then halfway through the next take, he'd say, I have another idea on the previous line. And he'd go back and go, okay, great. And then he'd, invariably improve on it, or at least give us another version of good for the cutting room. And I would say there was really something funny. Malcolm McDowell, we got all the way through the script. And at the very end, he said, now that I know what we're doing, would you mind if I did that opening scene again? And I'm like, well, I think we got it, but sure. And he reread the first third of the script again. And so I think for him, there was something, I can't tell you what it was, but there was something about the process that, even though he was brilliant and you couldn't tell by listening to the takes, he was a little like just not.
He locked into something.
He couldn't, he wasn't as comfortable at the beginning as he wanted to be. And then he got comfortable. And then he was like, oh, wait, I think I see what you were going for at the beginning. Let me try that again. I'm like, I'm pretty sure we got it and it's great, but okay. So that was kind of interesting. I think for me, it was about seeing how they approach the material. And who was it? Let me hold on one second. There's somebody I'm trying to think about. Oh, so this was Axl Rose. So he was like terrific. I didn't realize he's sort of become this like a Bigfoot in terms of like rock and roll, that he just doesn't do events and he doesn't do interviews. And so we got him for Scooby-Doo, and like there was an article in Rolling Stone, and Rolling Stone called me and wanted to do an interview with what it was like to work with Axl Rose. And that was pretty fun. But so anyway, so he came in, he wanted to record at night. So I think it was 9:00 in the evening session. And so after work, Mike and I went and got dinner, hung out, and then we went to the recording studio. And like I would normally ask people, do you want me to read the other parts? Do you not want me to read the other parts? Do you want me to do the voices if I do read the other parts, or my version of the voices? And he said he wanted me to read, but I forgot to ask him the second part. Do you want me to do the voices? So he's reading like a page of the material. And then I jump in with my crummy stand-in Shaggy and Scooby, you know, and he busted up laughing and couldn't stop for like 45 seconds. And he was like, man, I did not expect that. And he brought a couple of people with him, just a small little entourage, and they laughed too. But everybody had a good time.
You've got that recorded and saved somewhere?
Oh, I don't have it, but I'm sure it's recorded. And but it was kind of a nice icebreaker. But I think, but yeah, some people are definitely more trained actors than others, and some people are sort of bigger personalities than others. So like Terry Bradshaw came in, and he's such a big personality, and he's an actor, of course, too. But
yeah,
man, he just like came out of the gate, like a racehorse. And afterward, we're like, man, he should be permanent friends with the Scooby Gang. His natural personality fit right in. The one thing I want to add is that I would tell actors is that because first of all, we're TV animation, we're not even Disney or Pixar, so that big play normal, over the top tends to play big, and if just normal tends to play small. So, especially with TV animation where you don't really have that higher level of Disney type acting, you just need to give a little more to the performance. So I said, this is you're the guest, we want it to be you, but think of it as the cocktail part of you, where you're just turn the knob up to 11. And then most of them, they totally understand, and they just jump right into it.
And how many actually made it into the booth, and how many were remote?
Oh, yeah, good question. I would say probably half. It was usually the people. I mean, there were some people that I really wish I could have met, like Whoopi Goldberg for sure, and Morgan Freeman. He was remote, so that would have been really great to have him in. But Cher was in person. That was wonderful. Rev Run was in person. Axl Rose, of course, was in person. Weird Al, Batman, which was really great because I was very happy when he agreed to do it, Kevin. And I said, what's great? I said, I remember as a kid watching Batman on Scooby and just being so disappointed that it was like this dorky Batman. I said, I get to redo it and put a cool Batman in my Scooby. And he just kind of cocked his head. I think he was amused by it. And again, he was just wonderful.
Every time I see Cher doing a guest anything, I always think back to, I don't know how familiar you are with the X-Files, but there's an episode of that called The Postmodern Prometheus where Walking in Memphis, her version of Walking in Memphis, played a really big part in that. And there was a character that was a really big Cher fan, and they wanted Cher for the performance at the end. And she was like, X-Files, aliens, what's that? No, I'd rather not do it. And then she realized just how big X-Files was, and she saw the episode and she thought it was awesome. And she's like, why didn't I do that? And then I noticed that Cher seemed to say yes to a lot more stuff after that.
Oh, that's funny.
I saw her in Scooby, and even though there's like that legacy connection, I kind of wondered if there was a part of her that was like, no, if it sounds fun, I should just do it.
Yeah, maybe. It was funny because she was aware of, she remembered, doing it with Sunny, of course. And I said, yeah, and we brought the Frogman back too. And she smiled. So I don't know. I have no idea why. I generally don't ask people, why are you doing this?
You're just happy they're there.
Yeah, completely. Oh, Jason Sudeikis, unfortunately, was remote. That would have been really great to me. He was incredibly fun and funny. Oh, Jessica Biel was in person. That was pretty wonderful. Weird Al was in person, and Alex Trebek was in person. That was a two. He was, it was he passed away not long after. But man, he sure like can do that Jeopardy thing in his sleep. And the only direction I really gave him was, you don't have a lot of respect for Shaggy and Scooby. Somehow they got on the show, but you wish they weren't there. And he just found a way to get these little digs in, which they're. And of course I've seen the show, but I wasn't a huge Jeopardy fan that I watch it every week.
Yeah. But
friends of mine that did, they said that that he would do that with actual guests as well. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Did Carol Burnett come in?
Unfortunately, that was no. She was remote, but unfortunately there was a forest fire, and so Mike did her remotely. But then I just listened in on the phone, and because the connection was so bad, I just had to trust that the broad sense it was all great, and just in case there was like a particular joke or something that I could give some input on, I stayed out of it. but just to like speak with her a little bit before and after, was pretty wonderful.
It was a really interesting quality roster of people that came on.
Yeah, yeah. And then one of my favorites, this was funny, that it was where the Scooby Gang met the Scooby Gang. I don't know if you've seen Haunt of a Thousand Faces.
The voice actors, yeah.
Matt, Matt's like wickedly funny. and he would like, I'm a star. Why can't I be a guest star in Scooby-Doo? And actually, Mike and I were like, God, I wonder, is there something we could do? And the studio like resisted it for the longest time, like, maybe. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, what did you guys have in mind? And, we were just thrilled. And Michael had this whole idea to do a meta episode where, Shaggy and Scooby were big cartoon fans. And Daphne, it was actually friends with Frank. And, my friend makes cartoons. Let's go see how cartoons are made. And we just sort of use it as an excuse to include all the old villains. That was super fun because, again, Mike went in and he found something unique about everybody. Kate played the ukulele, for example, and he worked in a little bit where she could play the ukulele.
We've been focusing quite a bit on the guest stars, which, I mean, to be fair, is a big focus of the show. But I'm curious how once the go-ahead was given on making the show, how'd you go about like putting your team together? I mean, obviously, you were interested in bringing Mike on for story editor position.
Yeah, Mike was, Jay actually put us together. Said, look, I think you guys would make a great team. And, when I met this guy, I was like thinking, this guy loves Scooby-Doo more than any man his age should. I knew it was like, it would be the perfect partner. In terms of the other artists, it's the type of thing where, they give me a list of people coming up other shows. Then there's people that I kind of know and I'd like to bring on. And then, this little shakedown period where some people rise to other positions and some people don't work out. And then you just kind of settle. But that's kind of how it works. But man, they hit the ground running. It's like you're in production on Monday, whether you got a crew or not. So, it was pretty exciting.
I noticed because Michael has a history with Scooby-Doo, and I mean, he's been involved with a lot of really great shows. And also I noticed you had Frank Parr on as a director for a number of episodes, who also his time on Batman, the animated series, and like a bunch of other animated stuff that was kind of top notch. So I was kind of curious just because I know that like sometimes the executive in charge will just throw people together like you just described. And sometimes people will kind of build a team based on past experience I was just kind of...
I think mostly everybody tries to do that, but there's the issue of time and schedule availability where, some people can't join your team. So I was lucky in that I had Tracy Lee, who's an old colleague of mine from Disney Features. He came on as a character designer and he did board revisions and he did the drawing pretty much of all of our guest star drawings and the title cards. And sometimes I would do a rough. Sometimes my roughs were a little tighter than others, and sometimes they're almost all him. But he just had that natural appeal to his drawing that I wanted as many of his finished drawings in there as possible. But so that was great. But then some of the other artists, like Frank, I knew from years ago. My first jobs on Star Chaser that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. And I've been aware of his work for sure. And the guy draws about as well as anybody I know. So I thought he would be a really great addition, especially because, first of all, he's a little older, so he would know what I meant by classic Scooby. Solid filmmaking, but the classic cliches he would get. He wouldn't try to turn the show into G.I. Joe or, so we're going to do those cool camera angles. I'm like, no, we're about the home at the 3-field pan, the bicycle pan, and we're going to do that classic stuff. So I knew he would know all that stuff inside and out. He did some really fun episodes. Mike Milo, I'd been friends. I just recently had become friends with him, really. But this kind of material I thought was right up his alley. And Sean Bishop is an old friend that I've known for years. And I've used him as a board artist before. And so when he became available to direct, I kind of jumped on him for that. That guy just draws beautifully too. And he's just a consummate fan. So that's kind of how I assembled those people. My art director, the beginning art director, Nadia, I knew from Disney TV and Kim Possible. And then later, she went back to Nickelodeon. And Martin Knudsen took over the reins. She was great. So it's kind of that, there's again, kind of bring in as many people as you want to stack the deck. Then you got some people you've never worked with before, and then you just sort of figure it out as you go.
It's like making a stew.
Yeah, kind of. And then you go, if your friend's not available, you go, well, who do you recommend? Who's the you on the outside that you'd recommend? Because I need someone that does what you do. And they go, oh, and most people have a name or two to drop at that point. So it's not impossible.
You mentioned the old style filmmaking of the show, and that was something that became pretty evident to me early on. I mean, there was the obvious, homage to the new Scooby-Doo movies with the guest stars, but you do stick pretty hard and fast to like right and left movement. There's not a lot of crazy angles. You do it sometimes, but even the run cycles and stuff, like they're very classic. They're very, you're very much.
But there's certain things that, like, one is I like solid filmmaking. When I teach storyboarding at Chapman, I just teach, just solid nuts and bolts film grammar, just so, that things will work and make sense in a very classical way. So I want stuff to cut. I don't want to do a wacky camera angle unless there's a reason for a wacky camera angle. So that's kind of number one, that there's sort of it's a rookie shot in TV animation, I think, where for establishing shots, people put the camera on the ceiling and it looks like a security camera shot. And it's a rookie shot because it's just an easy way to show where everybody is. Now, there's a million reasons to do a cool shot where you put the camera on the ceiling, but for that to be a default establishing the shot, I don't want to do it, and I don't want to camp the camera for no reason. So kind of the general rule for our show was when we're with Scooby-Doo and the gang, it's a sitcom. So the camera's at chest height, and I want basic film grammar. I want to track the screen direction left and right, and the cutting pattern, I want to start wide and, generally speaking, get progressively closer until there's a reason to cut wide again. So that's the kind of general rule. Now, once the monster comes in, then Shaggy and Scooby, when they're running, they're like, oh man, we got to get out of here, looking over their shoulder. Well, then you can do a cool canted angle on the tiles on the ceiling. You can do crazy stuff there. But when you cut back to the gang, you still need to be flat. And it really goes back to Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein. Because if you watch Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, what's great is, like, they're Abbott and Costello and they're funny and there's the way they will. But it's shot like they're comedies, which comedies are generally shot a little more, conservative, if that's the right term, but a little more traditional. And then the monsters show up, and that's the real mummy. It's the real werewolf. It's not some weird cartoony version. And then the humor comes from how Abbott and Costello react, because the other characters are still monsters. Dracula's still a blood-sucking, demon. So I wanted in our show the humor to come from Shaggy and Scooby, but when the monster comes on, I wanted to play it super comic booky and scary, and music to go super scary, like all that Hoyt Curtin stuff, so the little kids would think Shaggy and Scooby were going to die.
Did the classic style help somewhat production-wise? I mean, obviously we talked about time being very precious in some cases. Being able to sort of rely on that old school vocabulary, did that help the process along?
You'd think it would. And that's how I pitched it. That's how I talk to the board artists. But that style evolved from people that have been in the business like 20 years that knew like how to make a shorthand. But what I found for people that have never done it, that it was actually more work because they were trying to figure out how to do it. And a lot of times it was still, the first pass would come out just very complicated. And, there's not a lot of time to refine. But yeah, so no, it should have. I think it ultimately would have if we kept at it long enough. But I was a little vexing because Mike and I would think, back in the day when they were doing this, the whole idea was to be done by 5 so you could hit the bar. And it's like, what are we doing wrong that it's taken so long? But then it occurred to me that that's it. People have not been trained to do shows in a way. And I think if I were doing it today, and I did actually roll this into my next production, I would have set it up a little bit differently, to where I think I assumed that people just knew what that thing was, and they didn't. Where I'd probably, working with the art director, I would have mapped out some of this stuff a little bit.
That's kind of fascinating. That's not the thing that you expect to sort of trip things up. So,
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing,
but it makes sense.
Like on my current show, I make shorts for the Great Wolf Lodge based on some they have, and they're really great characters and content. It's a brilliant looking show. But based on Scooby, some of these shorthand things that weren't intuitive to everybody, I decided to get ahead of. So I did stock run cycles and walk cycles on everybody. I did a more extensive like model sheet or character expressions, you know, so people could just have a little more stuff just to, you know, rip off from at the beginning. Then a friend of mine, an incredibly talented animator, James Lopez, came on, and he actually did little tutorials on, well, what makes this character look like this character or how to handle that. So yeah, I guess even at my age, I can learn from a show and apply it to the next one.
I found the sound design kind of interesting too, because among all the other kind of homages to the original series, you seem to be using some old school Hanna-Barbera sounds as well.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because, you know, I most of my career, my style has been more of a caricature reality, not cartoon sound effects. You know, big loud sproings and, you know, the coconuts in the air and all that for Shaggy and Scooby running in the air. But then on this show, it was like, hey, all that stuff that I've always told people to stay away from in designing sound, let's just jump into the deep end with it and just milk the heck out of it. And it was like just crazy fun. And especially working with the sound design. You know that thing like when Fred Flintstone is about bowling and he goes, twinkle, 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 twinkle. And I said, I want that. Or the boom, you know, when he falls on his back. Whatever that is, I want that. And these guys, you know, they know what it is, or they'll play stuff for me. And so, yeah, it was very fun stuffing the Hanna-Barbera cliche sound effects that we just heard all through the 60s and early 70s into the shows.
So is it more of, I mean, the assumption that I made kind of in the beginning, and now that I'm kind of trying to put this into words, the answer is probably yes to both of the things I'm going to present. I kind of assumed that it was a lot of the callbacks were to tie it into the original show and to, you know, like you said, for the people who were young when they were watching those originally and they can enjoy it now. But also from hearing you talk, it kind of sounds like having worked at Disney as much as you have and not really been playing in this sandbox, the use of the sounds and the use of the style of filmmaking and the tropes and techniques of the Hanna-Barbera system, it almost seems like this is a new toy box that you're sort of being given the opportunity to play with. And you're like, well, I'm not just going to let them sit there. I'm going to try and use as many as I can.
Yeah. And you know, the characters are like that as well. You know, it's like, well, let me just revisit my childhood. And while I didn't reference the old show beyond, you know, I watched the first season of the original Scooby and Monsters, Inc. with Mystery Inc., which I enjoyed quite a bit, and a couple of the other versions. But then I just put them away. Mike and I were trying to make the show that felt like the show we remembered. And that's so we pictured ourselves, or at least I pictured myself, if I was watching this not having made it, it would feel like, oh, they're making a classic Scooby-Doo. So it felt more like the classic than maybe actually was the classic. But certainly I wanted it to sound like it. You know, I wanted the same, you know, goofy bell bottoms on Shaggy and that crazy shirt that doesn't really work dimensionally. Actually, I did, when it comes to designs, there were a couple little things I did try to update in the beginning. While I kept all the original clothes, there's no way you can take the ascot off Fred. It just doesn't work. Then it just becomes like a guy. But I gave Velma leggings and Converse instead of the knee socks. It looked amazing. And then Daphne, I gave little brown boots. And then Shaggy, I just put in skateboard pants and Vans, but kept the green shirt. And I was like, well, this is cool, because it still looks like the gang in their costumes, but it just like they're wearing something a little different today. And I still have like those drawings around here somewhere, but they ultimately didn't go for it. They're like, no. When we said original, we mean like 100% original. So actually, you know what it was? I think it was after my first pitch of the Route 66 summer vacation version that they came back and they said, no, we mean really original. And then I think I came back actually at different times and said, okay, if we're going to go really original, let's just jump in with both feet and let's just do Scooby-Doo and guest stars.
Any chance we can see those different character designs?
Yeah, I'd have to dig them up. The only thing I thought to actually bring up and make accessible were some of the title cards, but I don't know. Let me do a quick little search. We can keep talking, and I'll kind of search in the background.
Were there any touchstones for you guys when making the show, as far as, like, for example, you mentioned Mystery Incorporated? They were going for that kind of 80s horror sort of tonality, your Friday the 13th, your Nightmare on Elm Streets. You go to Be Cool Scooby-Doo, and they were very much going for absurdist, Marx Brothers, Monty Python-esque kind of humor. Did you guys have touchstones with Guess Who that were outside of the Scooby sphere?
I don't think so. I think we really wanted to stay pretty close. I mean, I didn't even want, and I would say, like, Mike and I, we agreed on like everything. It was crazy. It was such a fun partnership. The only thing is I was not crazy about that he liked is I didn't want to use the full names of any of the characters that have somehow, come to light over the last few decades. And some people think it's really fun, and I think it worked well in the Alex Trebek episode for people to know that Shaggy's real name is Norville. But for me, I'm usually like, I don't know. Okay, and now what? Velma Dinkley. Okay, you got a last name now, and so for me, it was like, well, that wasn't important for the original show. It's not important to us. But no, I think we just wanted to make a show that felt like the original show for us. And where it varied, we still thought it could have been an original show. Maybe the opera episode or the musical it turned into, maybe that one not so much. But I think all the others, absolutely.
Who came up with the name?
Oh, that's one of those things that I don't know. I want to say I did, but I don't. It's probably not. It was Scooby-Doo, Guess Who, Scooby-Doo, and Who, Scooby-Doo. We just kept thinking something like that. Scooby-Doo, who are you? There was always some type of question like that going on.
I know with the last show, they were basically given the name when they came in. They were like, hey, we want funny, and it's going to be called Be Cool Scooby-Doo. So they're like, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I wondered if you guys came up with it or if it was from the studio.
No, that was it. They said we could, left it to us, and then of course ultimately it was a Sam Register, decision in terms of thumbs up or thumbs down. I was really gratified though that they let me design new titles and use the original theme, which they have to pay a licensing fee for, and then use a title design that looked like the original show. Because usually they want like a title font and they want it to be colorful, and the original Scooby-Doo titles were just white, that ghostly white. And they let me do it. I was an exception. What was fun too is I got to just paraphrase the original lyrics into, Scooby-Dooby-Doo and Guess Who.
I forgot that you have a songwriting credit on that, don't you?
Yeah. Which is silly because it's like, it's Scooby-Dooby-Doo. it's just something that anybody would make up along with the new lines.
Well, it sounded like Vivek and David had fun putting that thing together. So
yeah, boy, Vivek was fantastic, and it's kind of a hard. It's actually harder than you think, when to recreate something like that, because he was the second person we went to, and the first one, even though we had the rights to the music and we said, here, do this, it sounded like a copy. It was really well done, but it sounded like somebody copying the Scooby-Doo theme. And we're like, no, we want like we want everyone to think, yeah, that's the Scooby-Doo theme song. Only if you listen to it side by side, it would be better and richer and all that. And so, yeah, Vivek gave us that.
It was fun. We broke down the stuff like in quite a bit of detail, not really having the opportunity to do that with like the original, Where Are You theme. It was kind of nice to, in a tangential way, kind of look at that original theme. Because Vivek had to break it down for himself in order to kind of put it together and reassemble it. So We don't usually get to look at, particularly with this franchise. I mean, one of the reasons I do the podcast is to sort of break down some of the process stuff, because the stuff we tend to get is the EPK stuff, if we get anything at all. And for people who are really into animation and people who are into this franchise and these characters, a lot of us have been around for a while. There are, newer, younger viewers, but some of us have been around, and
Sure.
we're old enough to have that curiosity about the behind the scenes stuff, the same way that we would about any production, if that's sort of where our leanings are. So any chance I get to break anything down, I lean into it.
Yeah, no, of course. But, I'm the same way. One thing that fun anecdote. I got to work with Mark Hamill a couple times as himself once, as the Joker once, and then as the Trickster. But I can't. It was probably the episode where he was playing himself, but it was the third time, and I felt a little more easy around him. So I brought in my old Mad Magazine, the musical comic from 1978 or something. And it had a white cover on it. I asked him to sign it to me, and which he did, and it was, really wrote something really nice. But inside, those songs in Mad were just wicked, and he started performing his panels, like reading the comic book pages. And it was like, oh my God, this would make a fantastic episode. He sounded great. So what else? I'm gonna have to unfortunately jump back into work. What else can I tell you about the show? The actors? What about the gang? We haven't really talked about the gang.
Well, we haven't really talked about the gang because the gang is fairly traditional. I think you didn't really push them very far. So
I know my direction is milk the cliche. My glasses. I can't find my glasses.
I mean, that was the aesthetic. That was like I said before, there's the things that rhyme with the previous iterations, and even within like the show itself. And it was fun to see. I am curious, did any particular episode pose any sort of crazy production challenge for you guys?
The musical episode with Christian Slater, that tended to be a little more of an elaborate one, because it was very there's some pretty designy elements in the opening act that required a few more visual effects and a few more comping gags than normally we do in the episode. So that one, I think production-wise, just seemed to kind of drag on a little bit longer. And we used one of the graphic designers over at Warner Brothers to really help us out, pulling some of that stuff off at the last minute. But I think, so that one was tough for that reason. Some of them, went through a pretty big rewrite phase, and not so much because the writing didn't work, but because like the episode turned out too long, and then we had to cut stuff, and then we had to write new things to fill in. And people around the office would do the scratch. Now in features, the director or writer or anybody may record scratch, but it's really just there up until the point you bring the actor back in, and then you animate to the production voice. In TV, works a little differently. If you have scratch in the production, that's what gets animated to, and then the actors come in, and then they have to lip sync to your scratch. And some of us got pretty good at doing the cadence of the actors to where they dropped in pretty well, and they're pros and did a great job. Occasionally a little less well, but then there's one scene in the Whoopi Goldberg where at the last minute I'm doing everybody's voice in the scratch, and it got animated to. I don't even think I have a copy of it, unfortunately, but it was pretty funny seeing the gang ring the doorbell and have a conversation with themselves, and it's all versions of me.
Last question I'll bug you with. This show was the first show that basically ended up kind of destined for streaming on the Boomerang app, at least domestically in the US. I know like in Canada, it showed up on Teletoon, probably showed up on TV and other places. Was that a consideration at all in the production of it, or did you just approach it?
Nah, I kind of figured that's all for those people to figure out. It's like, how long is it? All right, it's 22. All right, does that mean really 22, or is it 21:50? Tell me exactly what you want. But yeah, once things get into promotions, you're there to help them do it. But I always figure that's their deal. I learned that from Betty Thomas on Alvin. It's like she was super accommodating of all those people, but she was like, the advertising people, they're going to shoot their thing. They have their reasons for doing things the way they do. She was not a control freak at all about that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good way to work. What do you need? Okay, yeah, you go do that. All right, you done? Great. Get out of here. I got my work to do.
You're very chill, Chris.
No. Depends on the day.
Well, I've taken up a ton of your time. I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking about the show, which for the last couple of years, there hasn't really been a lot of chatter about. So this is great.
Yeah. So maybe you can create some.
I'm going to be talking to Michael in a little bit, and maybe we'll see if we can get some art people on here and get some Guess Who stuff on the go.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, hit me up again. I'll see if I can find some art to send your way too.
Will do. Oh, is there anything that you want to throw out that you're working on to let people know?
Oh yeah, because it's actually coming out really soon. Producing a bunch of content for the Great Wolf Lodge resorts, which are the number 2 resort in the country. That I had no idea. But they've had all these characters, these anthropomorphic animal characters, but they didn't have a world. So they finally came and they put a whole mythology together. I've been working with Kent Redeker. And yeah, the first 44-minute, I think they're going to have a dive-in at their water park in their resort next month. So that's it. It's the Great Wolf Pack. And there's a 44-minute, a bunch of 22s, and a bunch of shorts for the characters. And they're going to be exclusive to the resorts. They're very stylish. I'm producing them with 6-point harness. They won the Oscar for Hair Love a couple of years ago. They've produced a bunch of really terrific stuff over the years.
And there's a film coming as well, isn't there not? The Paws of Fury film.
Oh, the Paws of Fury, yes. That's July. What the heck? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so funny because I was like, oh wait, that was even before Scooby. So I'm going in chronological order.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm super excited. Sam Jackson and Ricky Gervais. And
watch for that in July.
Yeah.
Well, good luck in all the future endeavors. Keep in touch and we'll talk again sometime.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Chris. And there you have it. That concludes my conversation with producer and showrunner of Scooby-Doo and Guess Who, Chris Bailey. I hope you found that informative. I hope that was as entertaining to listen to as it was for me to sit down and chat with Chris. And as previously mentioned, be sure to check out the DVD release for Scooby-Doo and Guess Who, the complete second season. Currently available in the US from all good retailers, online, and brick and mortar stores. Second season is the last 26 episodes. It completes the set. Unfortunately, no bonus features. I will probably be mentioning that in my review, as I always do, but lacking some behind the scenes stuff on the DVDs. You got a little bit of that listening to Chris here today. And if you're curious, be sure to check out Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank. It is the new feature film coming out from Paramount Pictures. Stars the voices of Ricky Gervais, George Takei, Gabriel Iglesias, Sam Jackson, Michael Cera, Mel Brooks, the amazing Mel Brooks, the incomparable Michelle Yeoh. It sounds like a lot of fun, and if anything that we talked about at the end there of the conversation, if that's piqued your curiosity, be sure to look that up. Coming out July 15th in the US and Canada, if I am not mistaken. If you enjoyed what you heard here and you like listening to the podcast, be sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe on all the social media. We're kicking around on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, either as a podcast named Scooby-Doo or at Scooby-Doocast. And of course, there's the WordPress blog, which is scoobydoocast.wordpress.com, where I occasionally feature text reviews, some text interviews, the Apocalypse variations. Those are interviews with people doing variant covers for the Scooby Apocalypse comic books. And when there is some bonus features, some artwork or something tied into an interview that there is to share, I will usually link to the blog and share it there. So unfortunately, nothing of that sort to go with this conversation, but feel free to check out the blog if you're curious. Share the podcast, the episode, on social media if you know anybody else who might be curious, or you just want to give us a little signal boost. And let me know what you're thinking of the podcast, what you're thinking of the content and the conversations. Hit me up on Twitter or on the YouTube comment section. I'd be curious to know what is going on in the heads of the listeners. That's all I've got in store for you this time around. Currently working on some more Scooby-Doo and Guess Who guests, so hopefully I'll be able to announce some of those soon. Also have a few other interesting people kind of lined up that I'm planning to get to in the next few weeks. I think there's going to be another Apocalypse Variations audio edition soon. Hoping to have a new audio commentary coming out sometime this summer, and also I've got 2 sort of side projects that are connected to the show that I'm hoping to launch in the fall. And I'm kind of dropping that now because the wheels are in motion, and by saying it out loud, I'm kind of locking myself into making it happen, because people will now possibly expect it, and occasionally someone will say, hey, where's that thing you were talking about? And I'm accountable for it. Some exciting stuff hopefully coming up, stuff to look forward to. Thank you all so much for supporting the podcast, for listening to the show, giving your time to listening to these conversations. Hope everybody is staying safe, staying healthy, staying happy, and be sure to come back next time when we'll have another great conversation with another interesting creative who's worked on Scooby-Doo in some capacity. And until then, we'll see you next time on a podcast named Scooby-Doo.
Everybody cheer! This is how we solve the mystery. This is how we solve the mystery. So in summation, this narration's my donation to the art of mystery solving dictation. And here's what the bad guys say when they play where the law forbids.
Would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
This is how we solve the mystery. Bye.